Welcome to English Story. The sun burned hot over the dusty prairie town, the kind of heat that seemed to make the earth itself hold its breath. In the middle of that silence came the cruelest sound, the laughter of boys who thought themselves powerful. Their voices echoed through the empty wooden street as a young girl stood trembling, her wrists tied to a rough wooden post. Her hair, once long and golden like the wheat fields she had grown up running through, was being torn apart strand by strand. Scissors glinted in the sunlight, cruel steel flashing as they cut through her braids. She cried out, not because of the pain of her hair being cut, but because each snip seemed to cut away a piece of her pride, her identity, and her innocence. The boys laughed louder, feeding on her humiliation, never realizing that each cruel act was stitching their own fate. For they had no idea who was coming for them, no idea who her father was, and no idea that within minutes, they would go from laughing to begging. If you believe in stories, second chances, and justice, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, English Story. Your support helps bring more powerful and emotional stories to life. She was only 17, a prairie girl named Clara, raised on the wide open land where skies stretched forever and every sunrise painted the world in hope. Her life was simple, feeding chickens in the morning, mending fences in the afternoon, and reading old books by lantern light at night. Her father had always been her shield, a strong and quiet man who rarely spoke of his past. People in town knew better than to cross him, but few truly knew why. Clara loved him dearly, but she longed to be seen as more than the daughter of a farmer. That was why she had begged to attend the small town school. She wanted to learn, to belong. But belonging was never simple. The moment she walked into that classroom, wearing her plain prairie dress and carrying books wrapped in old cloth, the other children whispered. They laughed at her patched sleeves, her calloused hands, her simple way of speaking. Some turned their backs, but others, the cruelest of the group, made her their target. At first, it was mocking words, snide remarks about her hair or her shoes. Then came the shoves in the hallway, the stolen books, the cruel games. Clara endured it all, her cheeks burning but her spirit unbroken. She believed in kindness, in turning the other cheek, just as her father had taught her. But bullies rarely stop when kindness meets cruelty. One afternoon, as the sun hung high over the town, the boys cornered her in the street. No one dared intervene. They tied her to the post and, with mocking laughter, declared that a farm girl didn't deserve fancy hair. As the scissors cut away, Clara felt a deep shame and sorrow that burned hotter than the prairie sun. Strands of her golden hair fell into the dirt, and she felt smaller with each piece lost. Tears blurred her vision, but deep inside, something else stirred, a hope, a prayer, a certainty that her father would come. And he did. From the edge of town, the sound of heavy boots striking dirt silenced the laughter. Heads turned. A tall figure walked down the street, his shadow long against the golden dust. His broad shoulders were wrapped in a black coat that seemed to carry the weight of storms. His hat was pulled low, but his eyes, sharp, blazing, were fixed on the sight before him. It was Clara's father, a man the bullies had dismissed as just another farmer. But the moment he stepped closer, the air changed. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. People who watched from the porches whispered his name with fear and reverence. He stopped in front of the boys, his jaw tight, his fists curling slowly at his sides. Clara, her hair uneven and ragged, looked up at him with eyes full of relief. The boys stammered, their bravado draining from them like water from a broken bucket. They had heard rumors, of course, stories that her father had once been something more than a simple farmer, something dangerous. They never believed them. Until now. Without raising his voice, without even needing to strike, he commanded fear. His eyes told a story of a man who had seen battle, who had faced down men far worse than these boys. One by one, their laughter died. Their hands shook. The scissors fell into the dust. They stepped back, tripping over their own feet, their arrogance collapsing into desperation. In moments, the bullies who had laughed so loudly were begging for forgiveness, begging for mercy, begging to be spared from the storm they had unleashed. Clara's father untied her, brushing the dirt from her shoulders, his large hand gentle on her trembling arm. He looked at her, not with pity, but with pride, pride that she had endured, pride that she was his daughter. To the boys, he gave no more than a single warning: never again. And though his words were few, the fire in his gaze promised consequences far greater than they could bear if they dared to cross her again. From that day, no one in town laughed at Clara. No one mocked her simple dress or her calloused hands. Instead, they looked at her with a mix of respect and fear, for they had learned what strength was hidden behind her quiet presence. She held her head high, her hair slowly growing back, each strand a symbol not of shame, but of resilience. And as for her father, he never spoke of that day again. He didn't need to. The story spread through the town like wildfire. People whispered it in the saloon, in the church, in the fields. The prairie girl who had been mocked became the girl everyone respected. And the boys who had laughed learned the hardest lesson of all, that cruelty never ends in victory, and that some mistakes cost more than they can afford to pay. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to English Story. Your support means the world and helps us bring more emotional, inspiring stories straight to you. Special request: before you leave, share in the comments what part of the story moved you the most.